Hi, we're here for another episode of MYD Global, and with me today we have Lynne Hurricane. She's the Executive Director of Swiss Bear in New Bern, and I think you're going to really like what she's talking about today, because in all of my travels I have not heard of a project like this as a response to a hurricane. So Lynne, thank you for being here today, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, just before we start.
Okay.
What brought you here to this point?
Well, I have been living in New Bern since 2004, and I had moved here, as we had talked about, from Singapore. So it was a bit of a left turn in my life's journeys. But moved here in 2004. I initially started working for the New Bern Historical Society as their executive director, and then I moved over into this position 4 years ago. And this position is the executive director of an organization that's called Swiss Bear, and it is it's part of the Main Street program, which is a program that is in place for smaller cities across the United States. North Carolina is administered by the Department of Commerce. It's a program to have economic development through revitalization of historic buildings in downtowns. So our sphere of influence in New Bern is helping with economic development, specifically of downtown and an area called 5 Points, which has been under a community that has not had the resources available to it in the past as what it needs to be able to move forward with business development in that area of the city.
So you would have members? The downtown businesses would be part of your...
We don't have membership,
okay.
but we do have monthly meetings that are part of Swiss Bear and through the Chamber of Commerce for businesses that fall within this particular footprint. And so we communicate with it's a back and forth communication between the businesses and Swiss Bear, and we help with all sorts of activities, from advertising to trash consolidation to dealing with ordinances for temporary signage and just all the things that business communities need in a downtown to be able to make it work smoothly.
Yeah. And so were you here when Hurricane Florence hit?
I was one of the people who stayed too.
Uh-huh.
So I was here during Florence. It was actually good that I was here and I could hit the ground running as soon as the hurricane was over with, and help our businesses get back on their feet as quickly as possible with whatever their needs were, and that varied tremendously.
Yeah. One of the things when we were talking, you mentioned the Relief Fund, and I really would like you to explain how that worked, how you set it up, because I know communities struggle with mechanisms to help businesses in particular. And so just if you could explain how that Relief Fund worked, that would be great.
Sure. So several of my board members, it was I'm going to back up for a second. It was very clear very quickly that there were a lot of needs within the community, and that there were institutions and individuals that would want to give to something that was not connected with any kind of religious organization, but that was also local and at the local level. So we decided to go ahead and organize this New Bern Relief Fund, so that some donations that could be given to meet the needs of organizations and individual desires. So we were able to raise about $380,000 through this. $100,000 of that came from MasterCard. $100,000 of that came from a concert that was held about a month after the hurricane, that was part of the city's festival, and we were able to take $100,000 of the profits from that and put that into the relief fund as well. And then the rest of it came basically from individual donations over the course of even recently. We've had some as of about 3 months ago.
And people were giving online?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we had it set up online through PayPal.
And so in total, the fund grew to?
About $380,000.
So what are the kinds of things that you were able to do with the fund?
Okay, so we still have a balance that we're waiting to see what we can do in terms of working with a redevelopment commission that was set up by the city of New Bern prior to the hurricane. But the redevelopment commission is actually working on projects that were in an area that was heavily affected by the hurricane. It just happened to be coincidental. So we're trying to see if there's something that we can do there. There's also some other options that we're thinking about, and that's about $110,000 worth of funds at this point that are remaining in that fund. Some of the money was actually used to help bring people into our downtown community with Saturday events, so live music and artists and things on that line. So that was a very, very small amount of money. We're talking about just a couple of $1,000s has been put toward that. The rest of it has gone to the United Way, the local United Way, restricted to purchasing building supplies, 100% restricted to building supplies. That could be used by an organization called the CCDRA, which is a disaster relief group that has been set up using a nationwide model that has been in place for quite a long time, very successfully used in other communities, in order to be able to have caseworkers go out, meet with individual homeowners, make determinations as to what their needs are that have not been covered through FEMA or flood insurance, and then be able to work with different volunteer groups that come in, like Samaritan's Purse, or 8 Days of Hope, or Baptist Men and Methodist Men. They're all very active. They've all been very active groups within this recovery effort in the months after the hurricane. So those volunteer groups come in. They know what's remaining to be done on a particular home, and they sit down and they say, this is what I can. This is the part that I can do. We can provide this much toward helping to provide supplies, but we can't provide all of it. So where can we get what's needed in order to do the remainder of the work? So that's when they go into funds that have been donated through the United Way to go specifically toward the CCDRA projects, and that's what we put that money into, so that we can help get people back into their homes as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So we're not even a year since the hurricane hit at the time we were talking.
Right.
And you were saying that businesses they've bounced back relatively well.
Yeah. It's taken some time. Probably the first half a year was slow and difficult for most of the businesses. Obviously, there's some businesses that are perfectly positioned to do well after an event like this, if you're selling furniture or hardware. But if you're selling camping gear, you're not perfectly positioned post hurricane.
The tent, the tarp.
Yeah. So anyway, for those businesses that are just depending on local shoppers or people who are coming in from out of town, because we are a tourist destination. Yeah. So that's an important part of our equation here. Those businesses have noticed that their revenues year to year by comparison have started really improving as of April, and many of them have found that they're right on target, if not above target. Wow. Come July.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great.
Especially given that we are now almost 11 months out from the date of the hurricane. And we still don't have our convention center, and we still don't have our largest hotel in downtown. So, being at that point, 11 months out, we feel very fortunate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess one thing too, now that you've been through that, you've created this fund and done whatever you needed to do to get things back to normal. If you were to advise another community that hasn't thought of this yet, that may have a disaster in the near future, what's the advice you would give to them now to be thinking about?
I would just tell them to start thinking about it, because, we all watch television and see the news where communities or people are saying, I see this on TV all the time, but I never thought it was going to happen. And it does happen. And to be as prepared for whatever your particular community's disaster might be, to just start thinking about what it is that you can do, so that when the problems begin, you're not sitting there trying to figure out what to do and being helpless. We were very fortunate that we had some very, very quick thinking board members on my board that, immediately were like, okay, we can get this done. We can get this set up. One of my board members had actually gone through, just had graduated from the President's Leadership Academy in Washington, D.C., and it was a year-long program. So he was the one that was immediately, he had just gone through this year-long training in Washington, D.C. Yeah. So he was the one that was like, we need to do this. Let's get this up and running.
Yeah.
I don't know that we would have thought of that if we didn't have this particular board member saying that. I know not every community has somebody that's just come out of, being selected to be part of the President's Leadership Academy. We were fortunate that was the case. But I would really start thinking about what you could do, what kind of fund you might want to set up, and I would really, even more so than that, I would really work with your downtown businesses and try to get them to have a readiness plan in place. Yeah, because those that have it and those that don't, there's a big timeline difference in how quickly they recover. And then the other thing that I would really strongly recommend, which we touched upon briefly, is making sure that all of your downtown businesses have the appropriate insurances.
Yeah.
Because that's something that, and for residents to do the same thing. That's something that seems to slip by everyone. You just renew these policies over and over again without really thinking about it.
Yeah.
And those are really critical steps. So. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there anything else you want to share that comes to mind, or?
Yeah. Make sure you have a good group of people that are in place that know how to come together when a crisis takes place. I have a business continuity plan in place. I had mentioned that to you before. My board had required that I put that in place, and we had a resiliency team in place as well.
Wow.
So, and everybody on the resiliency team knew exactly what their role was and what needed to be done in what time frame immediately after a disaster, which got us up and running in a 3-day period of time.
Well, you may not realize this, but in many ways you are a best practice. Some of the work you have done, and unknowingly probably at the time, we need to do this. But many communities have not done that, have not taken that resiliency seriously, the business continuity seriously. Putting together that fund, just knowing that in your gut, knowing this needs to be done, and being able to follow through.
Yeah. So if you're in a community and it's your job to help businesses with whatever their issues may be, or it's your job to help, if you're an alderman or if you're a city staff person, being able to have a plan like this in place allows you to do your job much more quickly than if you don't have that. So that was I'll just be honest. When they were pushing that, I was like, all right, I'll do it. But thinking,
whatever.
What are the odds that I'm going to have to actually implement it? But I did, and I was grateful that I had it.
That is a great way to end it. I totally appreciate it. And thank you, Lynne, for sharing those personal experiences, the things you've learned. And I know that any community that's going to see this, they're going to learn and be able to even take your work further for them, to not have to go through what you went through. Right. And that's the whole point of paying it forward, right?
Right.
So thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Lynne, for your time.
Thank you.